foundation phase, games and play. So a very heavy focus on that 5 to 11s age group this evening. But as we're all excited about the return to football next week, we're also going to cover some of that stuff as well. In terms of the stuff around guidance and protocols, that's been released this week, I believe. So if you do have any questions around that, we're not going to be covering any of that tonight specifically. Our focus is going to be very much around the actual coaching on the grass content and how we can help you create a really positive environment to welcome back your players. Before we start and introduce ourselves and go any further, I'm just going to let you know that tonight is being recorded. I believe it's going to be then shared on the Sheffield and Hallamshire YouTube channel so that you can access this and watch it back in case you miss anything. So yeah, just to let you know really that it is being recorded. And again, that's why we've asked you as well to turn your videos off and mute yourself so that we can respect your privacy too. My name's Bex Garlick and I am the National Coach Development Lead for Women and Girls, mainly in the grassroots space. I also look after the East region, and my colleague that's joining me tonight is Amanda Greenslade, who I'll let you introduce yourself, Amanda, in a second. But Amanda is part of our PE team. She's the PE officer as part of that wider grassroots delivery team. So we're going to be delivering for you this evening. We are probably a bit of a new team really, although it's not too new to us because we've been in for 6 months, but during all the changes and the transition that happened over the summer last year, there was the grassroots delivery team that was formed. So you'll hopefully meet more of us. It probably would be Julie Chipchase in the hot seat tonight, delivering this. She covers the women and girls area. We've also got a D&I officer, and like I said, we've got Amanda from the PE team as well. Amanda, can you just jump to the next slide for me, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So as I said, we're covering some stuff around foundation phase tonight. We're also going to be looking at how we create that positive environment for the return to football. Some of you who may have seen previous events for the foundation phase content previously might have seen some of the roadshows that Pete Sturgis was involved in. Pete is very much still leading on the foundation phase content, and what we're going to be doing towards the end of the evening is we're going to be sharing some resources that you can take away and have a look at. You might have seen that there's a podcast specific for this content that's been released recently. There's loads of stuff on the FA Boot Room, and there's lots of stuff on the FA Learning YouTube channel as well. So our plan really is we're probably going to give you about an hour's worth of content. We are conscious that there is an England game on this evening as well that kicks off at 7:45. So we'll hopefully have you away in time for kick-off for those of you who are wanting to watch that. But what we will send you away with is some additional resources that will top your CPD hours up. So you will get the full 2 hours for this event this evening. So in terms of tonight, we're going to try and give you some content. I think we've pretty much got your first session back sorted, actually, looking at some of the content that we've pulled together. But we're also going to be encouraging you to engage with us in the chat box as well. And what we'll do at the very end, as we open out for questions and answering, we'll unmute everyone so that if people want to interact and ask a question, raise their hand, as some people have already found out how to do, then you can do that as well. But if there's any questions as we're going through, just drop it in the chat box, and as I'm delivering, Amanda will look after that chat box for us, and as Amanda's delivering and sharing stuff, I'll swap and look after the chat box. I think with that, Amanda, we've got our first question, have we, for the chat?
We do.
So first question really is just thinking about what impact we think COVID-19 has had on the young people that we're working with. You might have already seen this if any of you are parents or carers, any of you are teachers, and you've probably been engaging with the players in your teams. I'm sure whilst we've not been able to play football, there's been plenty of stuff going on, and different ways of interacting, different online sessions and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, just any ideas to drop in the chat box around what impact we think COVID-19 has potentially had on the young players that we're going to be working with. I'll give you a couple of minutes to share some ideas.
So we've got some ideas coming through that they've got 15 girls absolutely ready to get back to it. There's some worries about loss of fitness, loss of confidence, too much time in front of the Xbox, absolutely, feeling a little bit isolated, restless, the massive impact on their social skills that might have happened. Some are really anxious and be hesitant about playing with other children again. These are all really, really good stuff that's coming through, and it's nice to see that you guys are really thinking on the same sort of lines of us. Just while you're doing that, I'll just introduce myself, a little bit more info about me. As well as being in the PE team, I also work at Doncaster Rover Bells as a technical director over there, so have oversight of all of the age groups, from the foundation phase all the way up to the under 16. So that is my role, as well as being at the FA. So I've got loads coming in about loss of confidence, worried about anxiety that's coming back into it, and a big thing about changes of routine. So there's some really interesting ideas that are coming through now in this area, and these are some of the ones that we picked up, that you might have thought about. Some of our children are really, really frustrated. They're coming back into an environment that has changed significantly for them over the last year, and a lot of them can't cope with that change, and it manifests itself in lots of frustration and behaviour changes that you might not have normally seen in our young people. So some of the challenges that you guys might see, that your one of your players that was previously really, really well behaved might have had a bit of a switch from this last lockdown. I know you've had different touch points with them in the summer and then again in December, but over this course of this year long, there's been quite a lot of behaviour changes that will have happened with them, and they're just trying to find their feet and figure out where they are at the moment. And that sense of isolation and loneliness will be really, really significant for some of them. For some of them, they'll be absolutely fine and they'll be full of energy and full of joy and can't wait to get back out onto the pitch. But we might see some that are really struggling. You guys really had the reduced fitness levels and maybe possible weight gain that we're seeing for them, and we've got to be mindful of that and understand that we need to get our children back active again. We know there's a bit of an obesity epidemic in this country. We know that there is a mental health epidemic that's starting in this country at the moment, and fitness and football and physical activity is a great way to help deal with those problems. But we need to be mindful in which way we do that. I mean, our first session, it can't all be about fitness. We've got to sort of open our eyes and think about what we're going to do to get our children back engaged with us, engaged with football, and hopefully progressing on and getting back to some sense of normality as well. And this is a great quote by Pete Sturgis, which we absolutely love. Working in the foundation phase offers a really unique opportunity. There's no better time to influence a child's attitude to sport and learning than during their early years. We've got this really special part of a child's life that we get to interact with. It's when they are absolute little sponges. They take in every single bit of information that we give them, and they can be turned off football or fall in love with the game, depending on what we do. Some of them, obviously, there'll be outside influences. There'll be environmental factors that affects that as well. But as a coach, it's really a big sense of responsibility when we're working at this age range, and what we want that to look like. So when we're working with our young children, we really need to consider these two aspects. We need to consider the developing child, what that child looks like during their phase of development. And we need to think about the sport, physical activity, and the game of football. And obviously there is a big relationship between those two areas. we have to be mindful that some children develop at a different rate. We have to be mindful that what we're actually trying to get them to do long term, and that is to fall in love with the game. So the relationship between the two of those and how we balance that off and how we deliver our sessions is a real skill and a knack that we have to work on to try and get the best out of our sessions that we deliver. So another question for you. In the chat box now, the happiest side of this, what are our young people most looking forward to about returning to football? What do you think is the key thing that they say is most important? I asked some of my RTC players. You're going to see a couple of videos in a minute. Let's see if we can figure out what are the two main areas that they're most looking forward to. Adam was in there straight away, playing with their friends, teammates. Having fun, seeing their mates, absolutely.
AD, I saw that you dropped in as Amanda was speaking there about how do we influence that in these circumstances. If you could just pop in the chat box and expand a little bit on that, and hopefully we might be able to answer that question.
Yes, a lot about just being active in somewhere different. Absolutely. For some of them, you know, they've only been at school, they've only been in their own little home environment. So this is absolutely going to be something different, and getting back into that routine. Absolutely brilliant. So a few little videos about what two of our players are looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to get back to see my friends, getting back to kicking a football around and also having lots of fun. Hi, the thing about that I'm missing about football is my friends.
And for me, that sums it up for them. They're two of our under 10 players, and that's all they're interested in, going to see their mates, getting back playing and kicking a football. So if it's as simple as that, I think all of us are going to be able to do a fantastic job of putting a session on. If that's all our young children want from us, then I think we can all achieve that and really put a good spin on the sessions that they get when they come back into us. So Bex, I'll hand over to you for this one.
Yeah, sorry, I've lost you. I was just jumping back to another slide. Yeah, so I think everything that's been highlighted there in the chat box. I think one of the if there was a vote or a poll on here, it'd be seeing their friends that came up top trumps. And I think, you know, that element of fun and that social aspect is going to be so important to them. Obviously, they returned to school a few weeks ago, and there'll be a lot of players, I imagine, in your teams that go to the same schools, but we also know that then they don't all go to the same school. So some of them won't have seen their teammates for quite some time. So I think that's going to be really important, and perhaps considering factoring in some opportunities for them to just catch up with their friends, some maybe less organised activities, especially at the beginning. If you've been on any of the courses recently and seen the arrival activities, those types of activities where it doesn't need much organisation and much input from us gives a real good opportunity for them to have that catch up with their friends, and get that out of their system, if you like. And it's also an opportunity during that for us to re-engage with them, and, you know, ask them and try and delve into maybe a little bit about how they're feeling returning to football. Amanda spoke about we might see a change in behaviour, but sometimes we need to dig a bit deeper into that change in behaviour and almost try and work out what's the underlying reasoning behind that. So it's a real good opportunity for us to move round as they're having that catch-up time and they're doing that arrival activity, for us to just check in with them as well and re-engage with them, find out what they've been up to, find out how their first few weeks of school have been, and from that you can probably gauge what the next few weeks for you and the team are going to look like and feel like as well. And I think if I think back to my experiences in the FA Skills programme and working a lot with the foundation phase throughout my coaching career. I think when you start to see those behaviour changes, that's when we can sometimes turn a little bit serious, because we're trying to fight fires and manage that behaviour. But I think, you know, that awareness of why those behaviours might look slightly different can help us to manage ourselves in the situation. And, you know, we're going to be eager to get back. We're going to want to try and get them ready for their first game. But actually, at this age group particularly, it's really just about them falling in love with the game, and enjoying themselves and having that fun element to their sessions. And I think we need to manage ourselves as coaches in that, and not try and take things too seriously, and emphasising that fun part. 'Cause if we're fun and we're joyful to be around as coaches, then that'll rub off on the kids as well. And then just that last point, I'm sure we're all familiar with the FA Four Corner model. I think it's around recognising, in terms of their development, the probably first thing, it's natural that the first thing to jump into our head is how far behind they may be, or what they've missed out on that left-hand side of the corner over this past year. But actually, it's reminding ourselves, what else have they missed out on that right-hand side of the model as well. So not just the technical, tactical and physical that we might actually physically be able to see, but what is the other stuff that they've really missed out on? What, in terms of their development, what is it psychologically? How have they been affected psychologically, and what skills have they missed out on developing it? And it's the same with the social, as you've all just made quite clear with your answers to that chat. They've missed out on seeing their mates, and, you know, being with their friends, and the social benefits and the social skills that they develop from that in itself are huge. And we can't lose sight of that right-hand side of the four corner model, because we're focusing and worried too much about that left-hand side, which we probably see as the football bit, but we know the right-hand side is massive as well.
I think this next sort of slides just really highlight what you're saying, Bex. It allow the players to fall in love with the game again, because some of them might not be sure if they want to continue, and it might be a tester for them to come back to it. Some will know that they've absolutely missed football and love it, but we need to tread carefully for the first couple of weeks, just to see, for those that haven't missed it, are they going to stick with us? Are they going to continue? There might be some dropout from the game, and it's our job to really re-engage them as best we can, so that they do want to have fun and develop their skills in that environment.
Yeah.
And then I'll just link to this one. We're just looking at the fact that everybody starts somewhere, and this foundation phase is hopefully where we can produce these future England players. And it's something that us at the FA are so passionate about, is if we get it right at this younger age group, hopefully we're going to be able to produce some world leading teams that will able to in 10, 20 years time be competing at the highest possible level.
Yeah.
So linked to this, the sort of stay on the ball message, which I'm sure you guys have heard Pete talk about quite a lot, and why it's so important at the younger level. But this is the sort of question we want to pose to you. If you have heard it, what do you think it means to you as a coach by staying on the ball? And how do you communicate that with your younger players? So what is staying on the ball for you? What does that mean to you individually? And then how do you communicate that with the players that you're working with? Big question, to be fair. People will be taking time to think about that one.
As people are pondering their answers to that, there's some really good stuff coming through on the chat box, just from what we've been saying for the last few minutes around that first session back, and ideas of just a bit of a walk and talk and a picnic going on as well, which is just brilliant, because it's that social engagement that's going to be so important. You know, wondering how many training sessions there are till the till the first game back. But I think, you know, if we see training and match day as kind of all part of the learning process, you know, it's almost a positive that they'll just be itching to get back and play in football, and they'll be really excited about that. And I guess how can we reiterate that for them? What we don't want to do really is build that up to that first game so that they almost become a bit fearful of it as well. So just seeing it as part of the learning process, and you know, when they're talking about how excited they are to play a match, like, let's engage with that conversation and tell them how excited you are to watch them play again. And that'll really help to maybe calm some of those anxieties that the players might have themselves as well, about that first game back.
And there's some interesting bits coming in the chat box of some different ideas of what staying on the ball means and how you might communicate that with your younger players. For us, this is what we're talking about when we want our children to stay on the ball, and it's keeping possession for your team, more individual time with or on the ball for the players, but most importantly as well, knowing when to share the ball with somebody else, looking for more attacking options, playing forwards rather than playing backwards or sideways, being able to turn away from pressure, and also taking somebody on 1v1. They're not in any priority order, those, but we're sort of what we're trying to encourage our young players to do, as someone's put in the chat box, it is not that kick it out, kick it up the field mentality. We want to create players that are skillful, that are technically able to play in this manner, and that starts at the foundation phase with what we're looking for them to do. We want them to be comfortable on the ball, and we know when our children first start playing, as soon as they get that ball, they panic and they try to give it away to somebody else because they don't like the pressure that's coming onto them. They're unsure of what to do, and we've got to create an environment where we really encourage these things and encourage our players to stay on the ball, even if that means they make mistakes. As a coach, I'm not bothered about that, because I'm seeing that our children are trying and learning, and it's only going to be through repetition and practice that they're going to get it right. If they're scared of what's going to happen if they lose possession, or someone scores a goal against them, then they're not going to be willing to try as well to try and improve these skills and set techniques. So setting up that environment where we encourage our players to do this is really, really key.
I think as well, Amanda, on that, you were talking about the longer term picture and linking it to the England squad. I guess just sat here thinking about the game tonight, you just take a moment to ask yourself, who are the players that you're looking forward to watching tonight? Who are the players that when they get on the ball, you're kind of thinking something could happen here, they could create something from this, and that all stems from this ability to be confident in possession as an individual. And the players that I can think of that usually really excite us are the ones that can just take the ball by the horns a bit and just kind of drive the team forward themselves and stay on it, create something, dribble with it, drive forward, all that stuff that's listed there. You know, they can deal with when they're under a little bit of pressure. They don't rush to try and pass it and make those mistakes, but that stems from that being encouraged at a very young age. And it's because they're in the development phase that they're in, they will give the ball away a lot more. And because as well at this age group, they tend to crowd round the ball a lot, that turnover in possession is much higher at this age group. And that's probably why we sometimes hear coaches encouraging them to pass it or to get rid of it, because we usually as the coaches can see the pressure coming towards them before they can see it themselves. But actually, if we're putting that pressure on, they're never going to learn to actually keep it. And I think someone wrote in the chat box before around, they'll get it wrong loads of times, but we're waiting for that moment where they get it right. But if we criticize or we encourage them to not do something because they've got it wrong so many times, they're never going to get to that point where they get it right, because they'll find an alternative or they'll be forced into an alternative.
I think we sort of concentrate quite a lot that our forward players, our wingers, our midfielders will be really, really good dribblers, and we don't tend to encourage it with some of our others. But wouldn't it be amazing that if it's every single player on the pitch? I've got a young goalkeeper who has probably got some of the best feet out of all of the players on the team, and it's absolutely outstanding for her to have that part of the game and the confidence to receive the ball, take it around the striker that's pressing it, get herself out of trouble, and to be able to play that ball forward. And it is little bits like that are so important, that it doesn't just have to be our wingers and our forward players that can excite with the ball. It can be our goalkeepers, it can be our defensive players. You know, obviously in the foundation phase, we're hoping that there's some player rotations and they're not all stuck in the same position for the entire time. But when they get a little bit older and they've had that experience, we get some real special players that are produced because of it.
Yeah.
So just
someone's sorry, Amanda, I keep jumping in here, but there's loads of good stuff coming through on this chat. Paul's just mentioned Luke Shaw, just what you said about defenders there. Like, he's a perfect example, and I think if you listen to or read some of the stuff that's been talked around how he's been managed by the different coaches that he's had, and the environment that's been created around him, look at how much he's flying now, perhaps potentially as a result of the environment that's been created for him, and the way in which he's been managed and coached through that and supported. Whereas, again, we don't know the ins and outs, but there's murmurings that might not have always been the case previously. So that the opportunity for him to thrive has come from that environment that's been created around him. But you've now got a real player there that we're excited to watch. And it's just as important in the foundation phase.
So what we're going to try and share with you now is some games that are really going to help you with some of these ideas. And yeah, just for the chat box, yes, we will give access to this to Tom. I'll give him the nice job of sending that out to you guys, but we'll definitely send you a copy of the PowerPoint slides for you guys to read and digest as part of post after this webinar. So the first game that we're going to share with you, a nice little arrival activity. It's got a little bit of a highlight in the physical corner. The reason why thinking and sharing this activity to start with, for our children that are a little bit worried about coming back, doing a whole big group game of something as their start point might not be their most comfortable way to come back into it. So in this game, it is just with a pair, with a partner, and it is just a little bit of box tag or cat and mouse. So you can set the players up, give them 4 cones, encourage them to set up their own square. They can pick the size of the square, give absolute ownership to the players that you are working with. One of them is the cat, one of them is the mouse. The cat obviously chases the mouse and tries to catch them. There is no restrictions on which direction they run in. They can change direction. They can do it with a ball, without a ball. The choice is entirely up to you. Try to keep them on the shape. And try to get them to shield the ball and change directions as much as possible to try and evade the person without. So this game is absolutely fantastic. If you have got children of different abilities as well, you can manage the difference between your players. So it might be that you have an absolutely fantastic dribbler that you know nobody's going to get anywhere near if they've got another ball at their feet. So you can challenge them to make sure that the tagger doesn't have a ball. You can have your child that might not be as confident, give them a really big square, because it's a lot easier to stay away from someone who's got when it's on a lot bigger square for them to dribble around. You can change the shape of it. You can make it into a circle. You can make it into a diamond. You can play around with it as much as you want to play around with it, just to give them loads of extra challenges. You could do it as a mini competition as they move from one player to the next each time. And it's a really, really physical game. The kids are absolutely exhausted after doing it for a couple of times. Bex, have you used this one before? Have you any other suggestions of how you might adapt it or change it?
Yeah, I've used similar. I was just going to jump in and say I really like games in boxes or using boxes, because there's loads you can do, and as we progress through, you'll see how it can just progress just in that box. But as an arrival, it's really good, because if you've only got 2, they always arrive in their dribs and drabs, don't they? They never all arrive together. So if you've just got a couple that have just turned up, you can get them started on this straight away. and then you can, if you need to differentiate, you can then swap and change around if you need to. And just on some of those progressions that Amanda described there, like, I always like asking the players as well what they would change to either make it more challenging or easier. I think I noted that someone had put in the chat box earlier they'd ask their daughter about what they're looking forward to in the return to football, and they said, oh, that we want the sessions to be harder. So actually ask them what is going to make this game harder for you, and they'll come up with ideas that we've not even thought of. And you know, if you've got players that, you know, you can start without a ball, you can start with a ball, like Amanda says, you can have one with a ball, one without a ball. Someone talked about putting bibs as a bit of a tag game. You could have a bib in your shorts or your tracksuit bottoms as they try and pull out the bib. So there's tons of different stuff you could do with it. I'm just wondering, Amanda, when you've used this game previously, what is the stuff that you reinforce as the coach? So obviously we can't just get to a stage where we set up games and just let them play and don't really intervene, but then at the same time we don't want to intervene too much because we don't want to overcoach. So what is the stuff that you reinforce as you're playing this game that helps maybe get some hidden coaching points out that's going to help the players?
Yeah, so really encourage them to make the decision about when they want to change direction, i.e. when that tagger gets a little bit close to them, what can they do to get away from that player? So that shielding technique of if you've got them that it needs to be a tackle or that they need to touch the ball, what can they do to then shield that? And after they've shielded it, to get away from them a little bit further. One of the other progressions is to encourage that at one point they can take it across the middle of the square. At one point as a sort of like a superhero cheat to give themselves the space and time to continue with what they're looking to do. And I'm really encouraging that sort of ball mastery, that movement of inside outside of the foot, sole of the foot, rolling the ball, and that shielding of it as well, instead of, you know, just kick and run and chase after it. Keeping that ball really close to them and then turning nice and quickly so that they're getting repetition of a load of skills without it being a boring repetition of a load of skills. So instead of me telling them to do a turn on a line or whatever, they're getting that through this game, and they've got that ownership and that decision about when to make it and when to do it.
I really liked as well how you talked about superheroes there. So you can theme this up however you want it to be themed up, based on what you know about your players and what they like. It reminds me of a video I saw on Twitter last night. There was, I think it was a PE lesson, but they had actually kids that were actually dressed up as superheroes, and I just thought, who wouldn't want to be involved in that game? So yeah, you can theme this up and call it what you like, based on what you know about your players, and it just makes it even more fun for them.
So what we're sort of saying, staying on the ball, and what it is and what it isn't. So it's not about being ball greedy, and it's not dribbling until you lose the ball or frustrating your teammates because you won't share it or lend it to somebody else. And it isn't always playing the easy ball and ignoring your teammates while satisfying your own needs. It's not any of that stuff, but we need to encourage our players that they want the ball and they want to be able to do something with it. And unless we set up games which allows them to do that, a lot of them will always go for that quick, easy option of either to get rid or to pass it to somebody else because they don't want that pressure on it. And as they get older, they'll realise they have more fun when they have the ball at their feet. So it's all those different games that we can really encourage that and what that looks like.
It's all down to the language that we use as well, isn't it, on that? Like, if we're thinking that it's greedy that they're staying on it, and then we're shouting things like, oh, don't be greedy, pass it, all that sort of stuff, that's going to put in their heads potentially that it's not a good thing to be able to stay on the ball. But actually, we've just talked about, and you've put loads of examples in the chat box about Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, Luke Shaw, Sterling, that we all love to watch, because they are so good when they're on the ball and when they've got the ball at their feet. So I think language is really important, but also, and we'll see a bit later on in some videos that we share with you of different challenges and different games. I think listen to the wording and the language that the coaches are using. Things like, how long can you stay on it for? So it's almost that little challenge, but it's not telling them to stay on it forever. Or how long can you stay on it for until you need to share it, or until it's the right time to share it. So we're starting to get them to think about their own decision making in that process as they're on the ball, and not seeing it as a bad thing that they can keep it for so long, because it's actually a really good thing. But how do we then shift them and nudge them towards starting to think about what's their next decision going to be as well?
And it's asking them the questions, you know, even at 6 years old, if they lost the ball and you ask them, you know, was that the right thing to do? If they had stayed on it too long and they lost it, and they'll be like, oh no, I should have passed it over there. Real excellent. There's your learning from that one exercise that they've just done. So absolutely, it's having those conversations with our children and really encouraging to stay on it, but when it's the right time to make sure they share it with somebody else as well.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to go over this next game, Bex? A little bit of the same, a bit of a progression from the box game of cat and mouse, very similar. So it might be that you start your session off with that box tag game, and then you could go straight into this one.
Yeah, again, really catchy title for them, but you can switch it up to stick to your theme, and make it sound exciting for them. But we're pretty much coming into the box now. So we were around the outside for the cat and mouse game, but we're now very much inside the box. And this is very much about staying on it and trying to keep it for as long as they can. So they'll be up against their opponent, and either you as the coach can call go, or I always prefer to allow the players to make their own decisions. And again, that's a decision that you can switch up. So you might allow the person on the ball to shout go for the first few times, but then you might switch it and allow the person who's their opponent, who's not got the ball, to shout go. So you've got, again, different start points and different reaction times based on who's saying the word go. And all you've got to do, the person who's got the ball, has just got to try and touch it as many times. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing here. You've just got to try and stay on the ball for as long as you can, but their opponent has got to try and touch the ball as many times as they can. And again, this is where you can really differentiate it to meet the needs of the players. So it might be, and in the rules it states that if your opponent touches the ball, they then have to run to the outside of the box and touch the outside of the box before they come in and try and touch it again. But actually, if you've got someone who's really dominant on that football, and really good at keeping it and really good at hiding it and manoeuvring it so that they get away from their opponent, actually you don't need that little extra rule that their opponent, once they've touched it, has to go and touch the side, because the person who's on the ball can probably cope with the constant pressure, whereas someone who's maybe not as used to being able to cope with that constant pressure, they might need that little rule and that little caveat. And again, because it's in pairs, you can switch up different partners, and as you can see in the rules there's different rules that you can add in and take away. You could add a scoring system into this. So as you can see in your box, it might be that you place some gates at the opposite side of the box that the person with the ball has got to try and dribble through without their opponent touching the ball. And again, by incorporating that scoring system, everyone loves scoring goals, loves scoring points. It gives them a little bit of a reward and a boost, but it can also turn it into a competition as well. You don't just have to have one gate, you might have different gates that they can get out of. But again, that might depend on the size of your box, because otherwise, if there's 4 gates that they can escape out of, it might become really easy. Or you might say your challenge is to try and escape out of all 4. So the first 2 might be easy, but the second 2 might be that bit more challenging. So again, different progressions that you can incorporate into this. I don't know if you've got any different progression ideas, Amanda.
I think with this game, it's so physical that you've got to give them break periods in between it. If you set them off on this task and you don't give them any break periods, they'll be absolutely exhausted and will switch off. So my sort of big top tip with this one is make sure that you give them chance to breathe, catch their breath, let them relax a little bit before moving on to the next one. Otherwise, the younger ones will switch off because it is just too physically challenging for them. So watch your players, keep an eye out, see how they're doing, and then give them some enforced breaks before moving on to the next bit. There's some interesting bits on the chat about playing out from the back and conceding a lot of goals that way, and how it's a tough call, especially when the opposition's got high presses and that sort of things. It's really frustrating. I've been there. We've played against teams that we obviously always try to play out from the back, and we keep that as a constant through all our age groups, that's how we want to play. And we will have teams that play a high press against us, and I'm okay with that because I want my defenders to be able to get out of that high press. And I think if we put them in their situations and we do lots of games like this, they will know exactly what they need to do to get that ball out of there and how to get it away from that high press. I think for me, watching, like someone said, kicking that long ball for 65 minutes, it's awful to watch. And I've played against teams that play it that way, and it can be so frustrating. But if they understand the bigger picture of what you're trying to do and why you're doing it, and the fact that you're trying to get them on the ball and not chasing balls that's bouncing across the field, you get the buy-in from your players, and it is framing it up. But we can't expect them to be able to get out of those situations if we don't encourage lots of games like this that will really allow them to hone their skills in training sessions to ensure that they can get out of them situations as well.
And I think that again that's where our role as a coach is really important, and recognizing the really good examples of where individuals are protecting it very well, and can we use some of those examples to highlight to the rest of the group. So it's not always us that have to demonstrate stuff. If the players are doing it really well, let's show them as an example, and the younger players will probably see that that's more achievable. If they see us do it, they think, well, of course you can do it. You're an adult and you're a coach and you've got all this knowledge. But if they see their teammates being able to do it, and when we're using them as example demonstrations, that can be a really effective coaching tool and intervention as well. What I really like about that game, as I was just listening in there as well, is it's a motivating one for the opposition, because they've got you've got the live system in. So I think sometimes when it's 1v1 and it is really tiring and you can't get the ball, obviously we can differentiate it, but that motivating factor of, can you try and touch the ball 10 times to win the game? You can change that. If it's someone who really struggles to win the ball back, you can just bring it down to maybe 7 or 5, but keeps the opponent motivated as well as the person that is on the ball. And yeah, I think just linking all this stuff together, I think it really is the missing link. And we talk so many times around probably our frustrations at times with the England teams, and how we've not always had those players that can keep the ball and be exciting with the ball and create things. So I think it's so important. And as we're seeing the Fodens and the Luke Shaws and the Sterlings emerge, if you think back to when the England DNA stuff was introduced, you can kind of see over time that we've had more of those players, like even with the younger ones that are coming through with like Sancho and those types of players. That's probably stemmed from some of the stuff that's been going on where they've been encouraged to do that. And so it's probably been a bit of a missing link, because ultimately, if the players, if they can't find someone to pass to or combine with, what are they going to do if they can't keep the ball as an individual? And the passing will come eventually. They'll learn to combine, they'll learn to share it. But it's a real good opportunity at this age group where I think, especially with the younger ones, they are still quite individual. That's why they all swarm around the ball, because they all want it. It's at this age group, it's my ball and I want it. So let's use that as a real good window of opportunity to go, yeah, have it and learn to keep it. And then eventually we'll learn to share it and we'll learn to combine with others. But that's the bit that will come next when they're ready in their developmental journey as well to start sharing with others. Let's use that window of opportunity to help teach them to keep it and keep it well.
So when we're sort of looking at these areas, we're looking for them to hide the ball, manoeuvre the ball, and then know when to reveal it to get that pressure. So these are our 3 real points when we're talking about our coaching points to them, looking to them hide, manoeuvre, and then reveal it. And we're going to share with you this game here, which is a great game that you can use with your players to really encourage that hide, reveal and manoeuvre the ball. So we'll let you have a little bit of a watch of this. I'll probably stop it halfway through and then pick up some ideas that it's showing us.
Ooh. And this is the halfway line. We've got blue and red. So that's the red half of the pitch. This is the blue half. For the red team, that is your home stadium. So that half is your home stadium. For the white team, that is your home stadium, the blue. So, can you get a ball? And you're going to play against Seth. Can you get a ball? You're going to play against Riley. Maisie, can you get a ball? And you're going to play against Lucas. Can you get a ball? You're going to play against Alfie.
No, can I go against
Yes, you get a ball.
Yes!
And Tyler and Oliver, can you get the ball?
Yeah.
Harry, ball. Jack, a ball. Maisie, a ball. Can your man-for-man markers go next to them? In that half, it's the opposite. Jaden's got a ball with his man-for-man marker. Corey's got a ball and Jaden's got a ball. We're going to play the game like this. At the moment, we've got 3 whites with the ball in their home stadium, with 3 reds trying to get the ball off them. Over here, we've got 3 reds in their home stadium, with 3 whites trying to get the ball off them. When I say go, reds, you have to keep the ball in your home stadium. Whites, if you can take it off them, take it into your home stadium, which is in this half. Maisie, if he takes it off you, you've got to take it off him and bring it back to your home stadium. Whites over here, keep the ball in your home stadium. Reds, you've got to take it off them, get it into your home stadium over there. If they take it off you, whites, get it back and bring it into your home stadium. Go! Oh, take it then, Phoenix, take it into your home stadium. We've already got 1 red in. Stay in there now, Phoenix. Stay in there now. Well done, Riley. In your home stadium, great work. Keep it in, keep it in. Once it's set up, this game runs itself. They've now got to take the ball and do something with it. So we're getting into gaining possession, but now I've got to dribble with it, protect it, shield it, get it to another destination, all right? Well, I tell you what, the Reds are doing well. There's only Maisie. Reds, keep your ball away from those whites. Oh, hang on, the Red, oh. Bring it back in. It's your ball, Lucas. Well done, Tyler. At last, the whites have got to play. Go on then, Corey. Go on. We got 5 seconds left. 5, 4, 3. Oh, whites. Oh, Phoenix getting it back. And rest.
So this is a firm favourite of mine. Absolutely love this game. I have used this with every single age group. My under 16s love it. Open age players love it. It is absolutely physically demanding for every single one of the players to be involved with, but you can do so many progressions with it as well. Lots and lots of 1v1 shielding the ball in their own half, or you can switch it a little bit and encourage them to go 1v1 and score in the opposition's net. So that there's two sort of ways that you can look at it and use it. It can either be a shielding exercise where they've got to keep it, like that game showed, in their own half of the pitch, or you could use the goals and be encouraging them to go 1v1, score in the opposite net, and then pick the ball up, etc. Change their partners, have rotations of it, let them go for about a minute, give them a minute's break, because it is such hard work for them. It's brilliant at building up resilience. It's brilliant at building up the ability to shield the ball, and it's also really, really good to challenge them physically. So absolutely big advocate of that game. If you get a chance to use it, please do, and see how your players enjoy it as well. So Bex is going to share, I think we've got another game after this one, it's sort of more to the same ideas, a little bit more games based, looking at the different elements. But before we get to that game, just a quick question to pose and get you thinking. How often and how much time do you spend allowing your players to experience a 1v1 situation, a 2v2, or a 3v3? Okay, so in your coaching sessions that you currently deliver, how much time do you think you spend in each of those in those sort of areas, in that real small-sided games? And people dead honest straight away, not enough. Absolutely, I always think and reflect on that as well. Brilliant to see people that doing about half their sessions. That's fantastic, and that it's included in every single session. Brill, small-sided games of 3v3s, 2v2s. Ace. And that's it's so good to see, you know, the idea of the 3v3 and the impact that playing 3v3s, 2v2s and 1v1s have is absolutely brilliant. And if you have the opportunity to do a little bit more, we'd really encourage that. Bex, you got any thoughts on that small-sided stuff, that real 1v1? Oh, we can't hear you, you're muted. Big fail.
Oh, I've done it, haven't I? Do you know what? I was typing back to someone and I didn't want it to disturb the sound on the video. That's why I muted myself. Yeah, a couple of points really, and it links back to some of the stuff that went in the chat box earlier around confidence, and when players in games are encouraged to stay on the ball but they keep losing it can have a real impact on confidence. I think the more opportunities we give them within training to do those 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s that are really small-sided and really put the spotlight on them in that safe environment to keep the ball, the more confident that they will get at keeping it. So their skills are going to improve. They're going to be more able and capable to keep it when we get to match day. And that will then obviously impact that if they're more confident that they can keep it, they're probably more likely to want to keep it. And it's going to mean that it's not as much as a demotivating factor that they keep losing it because they've been practicing and they're getting really good because the coach has given them plenty of opportunities in that safe environment in training to do so. And I think we used to do a lot of this stuff in the skills program, and the reason that we did it was because of the skills gap that we often see at these age groups, and it's one of the biggest things that jumps out when we talk to coaches, particularly working in the foundation phases. You'll have some really strong dominant players, and then you'll have ones that are really struggling. The spectrum of abilities is quite wide at this age group, and that personally for me as a coach is one of the most challenging things I find. But by utilizing these, because you can differentiate and you can pair them up with someone of similar ability, someone who's slightly better than them, someone who's slightly behind them or not as well advanced as them yet, you can just play around with the different people that they're working with and just ever so slightly adapt and tweak that challenge. And what that does over time is it helps to narrow that gap. And so for example, it's easy. I used to draw this when I was delivering it on courses, but if you've got someone who is struggling and then you've got someone who's really strong and dominant, and I saw something in the chat box earlier around if that strong dominant player is up front and the goalkeeper just kicks the ball to them, if they're the only player that gets on the ball and has that opportunity to keep it, their skill is going to go like that. But that's going to widen the gap further between those that aren't getting those same opportunities and who might be the ones who need to catch up. So through training and using these 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s, it allows that gap to be closed because, again, we can challenge them in different ways and up against different people. And at the same time, in match days, we can then encourage this and we can encourage them to get on the ball, because we can't just bring the ones that are good at dribbling along with us. We need to try and bring everyone along with us. And the reason we need to do that is, one, yes, because we're going to get better players as a result of it. But more importantly, if we don't bring everyone along with us, we're going to get more and more players falling out of the game because they can't keep up. And our role and responsibility in that is massively important. We have to be providing these opportunities within training, and we have to be encouraging it in match days as well. So yeah, they're my couple of points really on that stuff.
And these slides that I've just been flicking through as Bex has been talking are just highlighting these key areas that we've been speaking about over the last 10 minutes. And it's so important that we get this right. And we're just going to share with you another game that links really nicely to this. But this has got a little bit, it's got more constraints on it. It's a little bit further progressed than the stadium game. It's another of Pete Sturgis's game, and we're just going to highlight some of the important areas of it that makes it so good.
The score is 10-10. So this has been a great game, hasn't it? 10-10, but if you are in this middle area, so you see the white line of cones and the white line of cones, this is the middle area. If you pass the ball back from this middle area, your team loses a goal. You can score in the normal way, so you can add to your 10 goals. But if you are in this middle area and I'm a blue and kicking that way, if I pass the ball back, it now becomes 10-9 to the yellow team. If you are the yellow team and you get the ball here and you can't shoot, you can lay it back to somebody there from this area. If you do it from here, you lose a goal. If I'm a blue player and I'm in here and I'm kicking that way and I can pass back to my goalie and he can then go forward, you're allowed to do that. But if you pass it into your goalie from here, you lose a goal. You can pass it back to your goalkeeper in that end one. Oh. 11-10. Eventually, I'm going to stop square passes as well. But I'll allow that one. Oh, love it. 11-11. Play. Oh. Right. Coaches. One of the things we're really trying to work on with the DNA is just booting the ball away. So as hard as it's going to be, yeah, from now on, if anybody just kicks the ball out, you lose a goal. When we restart from the sides, you can dribble in or pass in, all right? But you wouldn't do that because you'll lose a goal. But what I want you to try and think about is there's not much space here, but there's loads here. So I can actually bring the ball back here. I've got now time to look forward, and now we can play. Off you go. Good boy. Only if he needs it.
Yes.
Your position, having the ball there off the goalie, was a brilliant position. He didn't pass the ball to you, but that was a great place to stand. Yeah. No offside. Were you the player that had the ball here? You did absolutely brilliantly. If you get the ball here, because I'm asking the goalkeepers to roll it out short, and you go under pressure, yeah, so you can pressure me, you can do exactly what you did, which was some brilliant work with you travelling with the ball. If you take the ball into this area, and I'm a yellow, I can actually pass back to the goalkeeper because I'm in that area. It's this area that we don't need to pass back. So you've now got two things you can think about doing. You can do your brilliant dribble and travel with the ball, but you can also use your goalkeeper. I don't mind it being a little bit false in the foundation phase if, when they get into the older age groups and they're under pressure, they've got so much more capability on the ball. But they won't get it if we don't hold our nerve and we keep reinforcing, play the way you face, play the easy ball. We've got to change that mantra, because at the highest level, it's not going to win you anything. Players of this age, well, you've seen how good they are. They can pass the ball back and play the easy ball with their eyes shut. I want to build more capacity and capability onto that so that they've got that one if they want it, which is the easy one, but they've got 4 or 5 other things that they're really comfortable in doing as well. So you've got to start using your brains now. You are allowed to travel into this area and pass back. All right? Oh.
So what I love about that video is the difference in that group of players over the 5 minutes that Pete was sharing that game. Just by having those little few constraints, it's really clear to see, just with the direction that he was given. Bex, what do you like about it?
I think, yeah, I was going to pick up on just his language and his enthusiasm, and there's been a few things dropped into the chat box around the challenge of getting parents on side with all of this stuff. If you just watch how enthusiastic Pete is and how he talks to the players around the importance of staying on the ball and the volume that he uses with his voice to emphasize that as well, you can't help but not get excited then when you see one of those players have a dribble and staying on it, because it's just infectious. And I think, you know, we can't all be Pete Sturge. I think I've spent probably 10 years trying to to mimic him, but I think that infectious personality of the coach can be really powerful. And just as he was talking to the coaches there, I can very much imagine that Pete would have talked to the parents in the exact same way as he was explaining stuff and talking through what he's doing and why he's doing what he's doing. I saw a question in the chat around how do we get the parents on side with all this stuff, and how do we get across the importance of staying on the ball in terms of the message? And I was trying to think, how would Pete do that and answer that in one of his sessions? And I can very much imagine him asking the players who in their favourite team excites them. I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, which I could probably see a few people leaving this call when they hear that, but I can't think of anyone in our team at the minute that does that. But if you ask the players who in their favourite team is really good and is really exciting to watch, it's very likely that they'll share a player that is really good on the ball. So we can expand on that. So whoever they come back with, say it's Phil Foden, what is it that you like about him? What is it that makes him really good at what he does? And as they're sharing that, you can just reinforce that and emphasize that you like that stuff about that player too. And if you do that in the earshot of the parents, and they can hear you having those conversations, and they can hear that their son or daughter's favorite player is that particular player because of their ability to stay on the ball, that can help with reinforcing those messages. We can also engage and encourage the parents by giving them little tasks during match day and even in training. Like, let's face it, all they're bothered about really when they come to the training or the match is their child. So get them focusing in on their son or daughter and give them a bit of an observation challenge, like how many successful dribbles can your son or daughter, how many successful dribbles have they done today? What's the longest they've managed to stay on the ball? All that sort of stuff. So you get them zoning in on their child, which is why they're there. But you're also getting them to pick out some stuff you want to see and pick out the highlights and get them to share that with their son or daughter as well, so that they can, that'll be a really good boost for their child as well. The fact that mum or dad's been watching me and they've picked out this that was really good about my game. So there's just probably some tips in terms of parents, because I know that's a big challenge, and I can see from the chat box. Yeah, David's just put in how many parents still pay their kids per goal they score. Which would take me into a whole new workshop on motivation and reward, which I'm not going to do because we promised a 7:45 finish.
So with that in mind, should we sort of wrap up our last few points? Yeah. This for me is really, really key, that the language we use when we come back will really, really affect our players. We've discussed it all the way through, but let's try not to be negative when they come back in and talk about needing to catch up or make up for lost time, or that they're so behind moving up to the next format or whatever. We need to cram in or cover ground that they've missed while they've been off. If we are wanting to talk to them about that lost time, let's do it with a really positive manner. So map out where they're currently at, look to move forward from their current ability, build upon, consolidate, master our prior learning. So if we can use more of the language on the right than the language on the left, and be really positive with our children when they come back, it will be really, really beneficial for them. And our top 6 factors that we really want you to think about is, let's reconnect with our players. Connection beats correction all the time. Use games to engage them. Make sure that we have them moving and playing games as much as possible. My all-time favourite: no laps, no lines, no lectures. We've had so much going off. That is the last thing our children need during this time. Absolutely no fitness sessions on that first session back. As a player, I couldn't think of anything worse of coming back to football and someone saying that we're going to do doggies up and down the pitch because, you know, we've been that unfit, etc., etc. So make sure everything we do has got football involved in it. A big challenge: can we have a one-to-one with everyone in that first session at some point? Make sure you chat with every child, make sure that they reconnect with you. Use as much positivity and praise as we possibly can with them. And if we do want to give them some areas to work on, make sure that we use like 2 stars and a wish or stars and steps to enable our players to reflect on the little areas that we want them to improve on, and let's keep that positivity and that language as positive as we can to really help them get back into football and enjoying it as much as possible. Anything to add on that one, Bex, before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Well, so I know Tom's we've got a link for a form that we need to drop into the chat box as a little bit of a review of today's session. We haven't got it on the slide because we weren't able to share it. So if Tom's got it and he can drop it into the chat, that would be absolutely brilliant. If you've got any feedback or questions that you want to give us directly, that is mine and Bex's email addresses of stuff. And this course of CPD, we're going to be liaising with Tom over this year, and hopefully there'll be more events in the region that you guys can engage with at the foundation phase, at the YDP phase and the PDP phase. So we'll be delivering a range of different workshops around that. So please keep a watch out for anything new that we're delivering. Hopefully they'll be back out on the grass as soon as possible. The form is in the chat that you guys can fill in, and I'm sure Tom would appreciate all the feedback based on that. But if not, if you've got any questions, please bob them in the chat, or wait for everyone to go and you can unmute and talk to us. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the engagement tonight, and hopefully we've given you 1 or 2 little games that you can take back into your first session to work with your players for.
Amanda, can I just jump in as well? What I'm going to also share in the chat box, and I will send these to Tom so that he can add them into the follow-up email as well, because I know that it's easy enough for things to get lost in the chat. There's been loads of questions around where can people get resources from, so I'll share some links in there. 3 things I'm going to share, like I said at the start, and encouraging people to utilise the last kind of half an hour really to top up for that 2 hours CPD. Have a look at the resources that we share. I'm going to share the YouTube link that's got loads of videos like we've shown you tonight, loads more of those that you can explore with session ideas if you're a person who likes to see sessions actually happening live. There is a podcast for the foundation phase that's recently been released, so I'll share that with you if you're a podcast listener when you're out driving or when you're out walking or wherever. And I'll also share the link to some stuff on the boot room as well if you're a bit more of a reader and like to read through articles and get your ideas. So trying to accommodate everyone, as I'm sure we all try to do when we're working with our players. Please take the time to have a look through those and just pick out 2 or 3 things that you're going to have a look at, and hopefully that will give you some fresh ideas as you move to return to football as well. But thanks for your input, thanks for your comments and your questions on the chat box. And like Amanda said, if there are any questions, we'll stick around for the next 5 or 10 minutes to answer anything. But by all means, if you want to go and catch the kick-off to the match, then go for that as well. Thanks everyone, take care.
Thanks a lot, guys. There's a question about CPD hours, that the 2 hours will be put on the coaching profile, won't it, Bex, on that?
It will, yeah. Yeah, I think Tom's taken a register, so once
Yeah, I'll use the chat function to go. Well, I'll use the meeting entries to go back and send that off so everyone will get their hours.
Perfect. All those links as well should now be in the chat box to YouTube, podcasts, and the boot room, and also the form. But Tom, I'll share these with you as well, so you can put it on the follow-up email.
Yeah, we will send a version of the presentation. It won't have the videos embedded on it because it's so big, but we'll put the links to the videos on it tomorrow, and then I'll share that with Tom tomorrow if that's okay, and he can mail it out to people.
Mikey, if you're still on, how do we get the kids past? Can we do shooting now? Just great. Go on. Sorry, Amanda.
I sent us some great quick shooting videos on the boot room. Sam Griff's got a really good one on there that have a look at the quick shooting games on there, because they're a little bit more engaging than just a line of kids with a goal and a load of footballs. So have a look at those.
Yeah.
Does the FA run a scouting course? If you know, yes, there is a talent ID level 1, 2, 3 and 4. I'm sure if you contact Tom, he'll be able to share some of those details of the courses. Obviously COVID at the moment has restricted delivery, but there are some talent ID courses that are around that you can engage with.
I've just dropped the link to them in the chat box as well.
So what does connection, not correction mean? So what we mean by that is it's easier to connect with children and talk to them in a positive manner to get them to engage with us, rather than spend our lives telling them what not to do. So if you connect with the children, they're more likely to behave and follow your instructions, rather than having to continuously correct if they're doing stuff wrong. So we really advocate connection over being telling them, and the correction that might entail if you haven't got that relationship with that child. Hopefully that's helped.
We've got a question in from A. Handley. Is there any material on moving kids from foundation to development phase? What I will do, another link for you, is there's some stuff on the youth development phase. So all the work that's gone into building the foundation phase content, that's similarly has been done for youth development phase. And I know that Graham Carrick, who has led quite a lot of this stuff, is very passionate about that transition from one to the other, and it shouldn't be any major difference. You know, I think quite often, quite often we see that you know, suddenly it stops being fun when they hit 12 because they've moved into the next phase. But actually, it should, all the stuff from the foundation phase should continue into youth development phase and beyond, because a lot of it is the same stuff. It's just that the players are in a different development phase themselves as people. So one of the big things, just off the top of my head, is that whereas in foundation phase they're quite parent focused, once they hit the teenage years and puberty and all that sort of stuff, their peers become massively important. So it's emphasising the importance again of that social corner, making time for them to connect with their peers and all that sort of stuff. But I'll drop the link in for the youth development phase stuff as well, and hopefully there's some content in there for you.
Just to answer Darren's question, yes, our team has been involved in different parts of the pilot of it, not us directly, but the follow-up stuff will be involved with different elements of it in the future. In our division, they've been heavily involved with that new level 1. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you'll get some of the face-to-face stuff with one of us in the future. Jim, is there any content to help build players' confidence? Yes, absolutely. Have a look at the falearning.com. There's some great stuff about confidence on there as well. I know we just keep directing you in that direction, but there is so much information on there, articles about it, videos, etc. So have an engage in that and see what you can find in those areas. All the links we sent in the follow-up email, we'll get Tom to do that for you, Angela, so they'll all be involved in that, so we'll make sure you have everything that you guys need.
I think someone was struggling to find the feedback form as well, so we'll definitely make sure that goes on the email.
Yeah.
I've already actually had an email from someone as well off the back of this.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely flying.
Love it. Absolutely love it. If there's any questions at all, feel free, put your hand up, unmute your mic, have a chat with us. If not, feel free to disappear off, watch the game, enjoy the rest of your evening.
We'll definitely mail out the feedback form, don't worry.
That's for everyone to say how rubbish it was, Bex. Maybe we won't. Yeah. very
can we leave that can we leave that question off, Tom? Can we delete that question from the form?
It's a pretty generic one, actually. Shouldn't get hammered too hard in there.
Gary, loads of content out there. I agree. Hopefully the links that we've shared will signpost you where to look as a starting point. It's all the FA content gathered in one place, but I think even we get confused a bit sometimes with the number of platforms, but I think it's just ensuring that there's something for everyone. So like I said, if you're a listener, you might want to get on board with the podcast. If you're a reader, you might want to read articles on the Boot Room. If you're a watcher, probably YouTube's the FA Learning YouTube channel is the place to be for that. So any update on level 2, Darren? It's been reviewed, so I think someone's already shared that they've been involved in the introduction to coaching football, which has replaced the level 1. So level 1's been reviewed and rolled out, and it would be it won't be a completely similar process for level 2, because I don't think the changes will be as drastic. But level 2 is the next one to be looked at and updated, really. So hopefully, I've not got an idea of timescales on that, unfortunately, but I do know that review is now underway. Now they've rolled out the introduction to coaching football. How are they updating the level 2? Again, I don't have the answer to that at the minute. It's still all under review. I think they're looking. So obviously, the introduction to coaching football has gone digital. They're looking at what will be needed beyond the introduction to coaching football in that level 2, in terms of what coaches will need at that point in their journey. I don't know what that will look like. What I can tell you is that the CPD offer that we're pulling together, that as a team we have been involved with pulling together, we've really emphasised the importance of practical face-to-face on the grass delivery through that CPD offer. So as we roll that out next season, I think the county FAs will start to be planning that over the next few months with us as teams, and hopefully we can get back on the grass and deliver some practical stuff for you. But in terms of level 2, I don't know what that will look like, but it will be looking at what are the needs of the coaches at that stage on their journey, and what's the next bit that they need beyond introduction to coaching football. Have the FA now binned futsal? Gary, I can see why you've asked that question, based on some of the stuff that probably went around Twitter when lots of changes and different things happened. It's still very much a part of the kind of development pathway. I think it's the importance of incorporating the messages around futsal into things like this, and I think that's, with that CPD offer that we look to roll out next season, there's a big drive from the people that are leading it on that, to ensure that we are helping coaches in all contexts, and that is inclusive of futsal. So if you are a futsal coach, you've got a futsal team, the CPD offer, how do we work with you to help you apply that to that futsal context, and the indoor surface and the variations on rules of futsal. So it's not completely being binned, for want of a better word. It's about incorporating it into all of our messages when we're working around coach development. I can't speak for anything outside of coach development because I'm not directly involved in that, but I do know it's very, we're wanting to integrate it into our messages rather than it sitting separately. And I do know that Pete Sturge is a massive advocate of it as well. To goalkeeping. Goalkeeping pathway, again, under review. I'm not sure where that's at the moment, to be honest, Adrian. And I don't know whether you'll still need to do your level 2 first. Yeah, I can only be honest and say I'm not sure where that's at the moment.
Bex, I'm so glad you're here. I don't know the answer to these questions.
When do we have to worry about overplaying? Let's play Saturday. Yeah, I think David, it's
this one.
Yeah, go on, Amanda. I'll let you take the hot seat
I
for
can
this.
do this one. I absolutely can do player exposure. This is my ballpark. I can do this one. It's it's a really interesting area, because some academies are in 4 nights a week and play a Saturday, and the lads might then play a representative team on a Sunday, and their loading is absolutely fine to enable them to do that. The best thing about loading is of the players that as long as they have gradually built up to that level of training playing, there should not be a problem. When we were kids, there was never an issue with you playing football, hockey, game on Saturday, game on Sunday. Then we sort of stripped it all back and we thought it was a problem. There was overuse injuries, etc. Now the sort of sports science, etc., is saying that it is fine as long as we don't go from nothing to that. So if this return from play, we need to make sure that it's a gradual reintroduction. Kids are really, really resilient. The only time that they aren't resilient is if they have growth spurts or other medical issues that might cause them to have an overuse injury, etc. So we need to make sure that if we have any signs of any children developing issues, that we strip that loading all the way back to ensure that they can cope with it. So it's a really interesting area. We know that the more that they do multi-sports, the better they're going to get. And that's absolutely fine. I know when I was a kid, I played football, I played hockey, I played for the school teams, I played for my clubs, and some days I had 2 games. I had a game at school on a Saturday morning and I had a game at the club in Saturday afternoon. I was absolutely fine, not an issue with it. There's sort of been some overprotection that's happened, rightly so, and it all depends on the individual player and their ability to manage that load that you're giving them. As long as they don't go back to that straight away after having a break, it should all be good. Hopefully that answers your question in a little bit. If there's nothing else, shall we? Oh, another one. Yeah, absolutely. About just worrying about the return, and it'd be a lot for some of them. They have been back in school for 2 weeks, so don't forget that they will have had some PE in schools. Hopefully they've been outside playing and doing some physical activity as well, so they should cope with it. My just big watch out is if they are complaining of knee pain, joint pain, muscle pain, make sure that you advise parents to just ease off a little bit, or search for some medical help with it so that it doesn't get progressively worse. Yeah, some schools are back in lockdown, AD. Yeah, their bubbles are going to break. Get a positive test, the kids are going to be out. Yeah, it's going to be like that for the rest of the year, I think. Just encourage them to get outside as much as possible.